Folks, before I hit record on this, I was telling Corey Muscara that he looks a lot cooler and sounds a lot cooler on the outside than I certainly feel on the inside. But Corey, look, thanks for joining us. It's a thrill to have you. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here, everyone.
How are you doing? Look, it's our first time meeting. I'm a big fan on social media. Instagram, I'm reading your stuff constantly. Twitter, I feel like I live in Corey Muscara's information. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for the question and the check-in. Uh, I'd say overall, I'm doing well right now.
Hmm.
The last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years have been uh, a bit of a stretch of really deep inquiry into next steps of my life and navigating some relationship stuff. And it's all kind of troubled me into a deeper conversation with my soul, you could say. And I feel like I'm kind of emerging on the other side of that with a new integration and embodiment and clarity. And so these days, it just feels like a refined moment to moment connection with my life and listening for what's true.
Well, I appreciate you saying so because the Corey I know, and I feel like we're best friends, even though we're just meeting now. All the stuff I read, the books, the podcast, you've been you were lived in a monastery for a while for 6 months, didn't say anything for 6 months. I want to hear more about that in a minute. But it seems to me like you are in this period of life where what you describe is real, but you're sharing this and you're so much in service to everybody, and every post of yours is uplifting and helping us all to find self. Is this the purpose right now?
Yeah, it feels like the purpose. Purpose is an interesting word to me because I think a lot of us use that to almost bully ourselves into knowing what we're supposed to be doing with our lives or what the rest of our lives are going to be like. I think many people get caught in purpose anxiety
Mhm.
and it becomes this existential inquiry. And if I don't know what it is, then I'm not maximizing my life. I really push back against that. My my current understanding and felt sense of a purpose in my life really just comes from a commitment to a deep listening on the deepest level that I can for what feels true for me right now at this stage in my life and just the momentary expression of that. As far as my investigation of the mind and the body and just my moment to moment experience has taken me, we have nothing more than that. It's just who we are in this moment, the capacity to listen for the different layers and the noise of the mind that wants different things. There's always competing parts that are there. Some parts want fame and money and pleasure. Other parts are looking for something deeper and connection. So it's incredibly noisy. It's really hard to parse like what is the deepest truth for me.
Mhm.
But in my experience is a place of stillness that we can get to where there's something that arises that it almost has the resonance of not being a decision. You don't feel like you're wrestling yourself into the next moment. It's just a clear sense of this is what's next. And my journey has been how do I align to that as best as possible? And that to me would be living in alignment with purpose and letting it unfold.
You know what? I feel like I could exhale and take a deep breath after what you said there, just because of the purpose anxiety, because drive, the drive to succeed, all these sorts of things, they are real. But look, before we get into this and sort of make it about golf a little bit, the folks who aren't familiar with you, please tell our global audience some about you. Do talk about your time in a monastery, studying. I can't remember the concept of what it was, but 6 months in silence, essentially. So I want to hear about that too, please.
Yeah. Well, this is a fun podcast for me because I don't know if I've ever been on a golf podcast
Yeah, you
before,
are.
golf
You've made it.
specific. Yeah. And my journey for people typically starts with the monastery. I mean, I got into meditation because I was, for no noble reasons, I was trying to impress my hippie girlfriend in college. She was in a meditation. I wanted her to think I was cool, so I started meditating. And then she broke up with me, and
Okay.
shortly after that, it was the pain of that breakup that actually caused me to take this whole thing more seriously. And then a year later, yeah, I was in a monastery with a shaved head. And I'll go into that in a moment. But the part of the journey that isn't spoken about as much is that prior to that, golf was actually a pretty big part of my life. Um, I didn't get into it at a very early age, but at age 12, growing up on Long Island in New York, it was my first love. And it was the thing that I poured my time and my energy and my passion into. And it was a roller coaster of a ride. I
And
mean,
I thought golf drove you to the monastery.
oh yeah, I mean, it definitely ripened me to realize, oh, there's suffering in life. And obviously it's golf, so we're not talking about a certain kind of suffering, but
Yeah.
it was one of the first things that really humbled me, where I would be practicing and playing exceptionally well, and then I would go into tournaments and like couldn't break 75,
Mhm.
and just wanting something so bad and not being able to get it. And then having to start over again, and ask myself, do I keep pushing for this? Do I keep practicing? Do I make another decision? Do I put energy elsewhere? I mean, I'm sure every athlete and anyone who endeavors into something deeply has their own story with it, but it really was a big character development.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, no kidding.
really like poked, highlighted areas where I had anxieties and insecurities, and it really developed a certain resilience that yeah, leading to, you could say all of that really ripened me and forced me to let go of a lot of things, to the point where I did start getting genuinely interested in, what is this life all about? You know, if it's not going to be, I'm not going to make it as a golfer. And granted, like I grew up in the Northeast playing 5 months a year. So I was never actually positioned to take it all the way, although I wanted it.
You had dreams,
Um,
I'm sure.
yeah, it was a dream,
Uh-huh.
but realizing like, okay, if it's not that, then what is it? What's the point of everything I'm doing? And it all just kept reducing to, I want to be happy, which is incredibly trite, but I
Mhm.
challenge anyone to narrow, or to really check each thing they want and push back, why do I want that? Why do I want that and that and that? And it's going to reduce to some form of, that will give me fulfillment, well-being, happiness, a sense of okayness. And so I was just seeing that more clearly, especially after this breakup. And I said, well, if that's the heart of what I'm looking for, why not just go there first, figure out what that is and how to get that, and then reverse engineer my life from there. That was the theory, at least.
Wow.
And the meditation was one of the ways that I was developing this deep quality of peace and introspection. And so, type A personality, right? Instead of practicing golf 14 hours a day, it's like, let's go to a monastery and practice meditation 14 hours a day. And that's what we did there. There was no speaking, no reading, no writing, no listening to music. Wake up at 3 a.m., go to bed no earlier than 10 p.m., and you have to do a minimum of 14 hours of practice each day.
Yeah, so many questions, but I want to move along from there. It's just fascinating. I could spend all the time speaking about that. But the folks download this one to play better golf. Now, I need to ask you this. It's trite, to use your term. Do you play golf at all now, or are you too busy with podcasting and and motivational speaking, public speaking, whatever you call it? Making appearances on television with Dr. Oz and company. I mean, do you have time for golf now?
Not as much as I used to, but it's also a personality quirk that I have. If I can't invest fully into something, I want to find the thing that I can put more time into.
Mhm.
And for me, that has been my practice and my teachings and this new journey that I'm on. But I do still play, and I have, an annual trip with my college buddies, and I look forward to it more than anything. So it's still a part of my life, and hopefully more so. Maybe the Champions Tour will be in my future.
Well, I'm convinced that some of the skills, and can forgive me if I'm using the wrong term to describe them, but some of the skills you've learned through this latter portion of your journey are equipping you to deal with the inevitable ups and downs. Because you spoke of the roller coaster, because that to me is what golf is. And that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to bring you on here so much, just to help people to sort of be able to find the calm within all the noise that might be practice or competition or just playing with your buddies or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to go into all of that. The unfortunate thing is that my mental game is in a totally different place, but now my physical game has regressed to when I was 13.
So
But Yeah.
Can you outthink a bad golf swing, or is that not possible? I don't think it's possible, is it?
I no, I've yeah, for me um it just continues to be a process of letting go as much as possible, investing in the mechanical side of things. But when I'm out there, it as much as possible, I am getting into a relaxed place, um, letting go and trying to access states of flow while I'm on the course. And we can double click into any of that and any particular point that you want to drill in on.
I want to, because I think you've just given me the name for this podcast, and it's Letting Go with Cory Muscara. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
like that.
let's start with this. I'm a firm believer. I'm very holistic, because I realized quickly enough, and that sort of was the origin of my question, that no matter how talented a golf teacher I am, I cannot teach you good. I can help you understand concepts and stuff, but in the end, it's the student that has to go and do it.
Hmm.
And so I realized fast enough that it's more than just the hands and the feet of golf. It's the head and the heart and the soul and the emotions and all of these things that are going into situation. And now I work as an announcer on the PGA Tour, and you can see it when a
Hmm.
golfer is not calm, or there's that not that peace that you speak of. Look,
Hmm.
they're adrenalized, but you can just see when the minds are quiet and they're in their flow, to use your term.
Yeah.
So I want to start here, because I think everything will sort of flow from that. Golf is one of those games that it can hit you hard, and it can make you feel like a failure in the blink of an eye.
Hmm.
And you put out a lot of tweets, and you've written a lot of stuff about self-love and becoming your own best friend. You had a life hack, I think it was, and
Mm.
you challenged people to, you want a life hack. All this social media is rampant with this stuff. Just learn to be your own best friend. And I
Yeah.
feel like if all of us golfers can get to that place, we'll probably survive the ups and the downs a whole lot easier. Would you agree? And
Yeah.
if so, I'd love your comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're out there, you can have support, you can have a great caddy, you can have people that care about you, but you're the one who's going through the motions. You're the one who's navigating your thoughts and your emotions and every step of it. And so if you're not your own best companion on that journey, you can really, you'll end up conditioning a lot of anxiety and inner turmoil. Now, I don't want to say that you can't play great golf like that. I think there's lots of examples actually of people who can even shame themselves into practicing more, and even just examples of people who aren't calm while they're out there. I mean, I look at some of Tiger's best moments. There's like a lot of anger that seems to arise, a lot of energy, but it's alchemized and directed in a particular way. The Where I've found like becoming your own best friend to be so powerful is that it allows you to actually have a conversation with yourself in those moments when something is arising, show up as your companion, and then say, given all of this right now, what is the next step? And I've got your back regardless of what happens. If you can be that for yourself, you're going to make clearer decisions. You're going to be able to navigate the highs and experience them more. You're going to be able to navigate the lows and get through them and come back. There has to be that companionship with yourself. Otherwise, you end up outsourcing your identity and outsourcing your sense of okayness to achievements and other people's opinions. And that's where you are going to get on a roller coaster, regardless of if you're playing golf or you're just going through life, because your sense of who you are and whether or not you're worthy is just predicated upon the next clap that you're getting or the next piece of praise or basically the arrangement of your life looking the way that your mind wants it to look. And great, we can all have those dreams and visions for ourselves, but it's never going to go exactly as we want it to. The rug will always get pulled out from beneath us. And those are the moments where we really need that companionship.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I wanted to, you got me thinking, because, at one stage, and I had the idea, then obviously got lost in all of the wash that is my golf day, my day, if you will. And I wanted to write something that was like letters to a younger me.
Mm,
And now that I have 52 years worth of wisdom, and I use that term lightly, but I've sort of been through it a little bit, And so a younger me, golfer coming up, aspirant, all those sorts of things, to say, look, that's not, it might feel like the end of the world to you right now, but there's a lot to be learned from here if you just choose to look upon it that way. And what you're saying to me is so true, where you don't need some mentor to come and tell you this.
Mm,
You, by saying become your own best friend, can sort of say, hey, I've got your back through all of this, it's going to be okay, just keep
yeah.
doing you. Am I understanding you correctly here?
Yeah. And I don't want to make it seem easier than it is. I mean, there's a lot of really strong barriers that many of us have to this sort of friendship with ourselves, especially if there have been parts of us at a certain point in our life, certain expressions that have showed up maybe when we were younger and they were chastised and people condemned us for being a certain way or for failing, let's just say. If we had strict parents, we failed and we lost love for that. Well, in those moments of failing now in the future, that failure is associated with a sense of shame and losing connection. And so all of that's going to keep coming back to the surface. And the showing up for yourself with love was never something that was trained for us. And
Mm,
so it's difficult, but there are simple things that you can start to do. And one of the easiest ways is many of us are much better able to show up for another person that we care about as a friend than we are ourselves.
yeah.
And we can all associate, for the most part, into what it would be like to coach a friend who's going through something difficult. Even to say something like, I know this is tough, Mark, but like you've been through this and this and this, and like I know you're going to get through this, and I'm here for you.
Mhm.
Like that's often much easier to say to another person. But if we can touch into that, the energy of that, and even the language of that, the first step is then what would it be like to turn that toward ourselves and just say that and embody that stance as if we're talking to ourselves like we would a good friend. And then the simple, heuristic you do with this is just in those moments where there's a celebration, like something good happens, practice celebrating yourself like you would a good friend. If
Mhm.
something bad happens, practice consoling yourself like you would a good friend. If something trying is there, practice encouraging yourself like you would a good friend. And that's a really simple starting point that most people can touch into.
Okay, you have my mind all over the place. I was preparing myself for this. That's why I've got copious notes here that I feel I don't want to make this too. I want this a conversation, but anyway, there are things I want to get to. But I almost feel like I've put the cart before the horse now.
Mm,
And maybe I should say to you, okay, this is a golf podcast. We play golf. We all want to do better at golf. But if you drill down and you drill down and you drill down, at the base, the well of the bottom of the well, whatever you want to call it, of this all, is it what? Self accreditation, or is it just being okay with self? Where does this whole thing start? I guess is my question, because the golf is sort of just the vehicle that we're doing, and we sort of living vicariously with the ups and downs, etc. Are you understanding where
mm.
I'm trying to go here?
Can you, when you say the self accreditation, yeah, can you just elaborate a little bit more
Well,
on that?
at our deepest level,
Hmm. As
mind,
humans,
spirit, and soul as humans, and that's who
yes.
we are. But I guess what I'm trying to say is this golf thing, as basic as what it is, can help us to lose focus of exactly who we are
Hmm.
through this all. You
Yeah.
where I am, and then we go looking down the road for golf lessons or whatever the case might be to try and fix the problem, but the
Yeah.
problem is way down in this area.
Right.
You get
Yeah. You know, golf will, in my experience, just amplify whatever it is that's already here.
hmm
And so if you're lost and anxious and questioning yourself and caught in self doubt, then you're going to experience all of those patterns show up on the golf course in the same way you're going to experience them all show up in a relationship. If you feel connected and attuned to yourself and loving yourself and moment to moment presence, then golf is just going to be, all of that's going to express itself through golf. And so I think where we get in trouble is when we start trying to solve these deeper insecurities or inner voids through something external
Yeah,
like golf.
yeah.
And when I get to that point, then I'll be resolved. And how many examples are there of all of us who are chasing a certain endpoint, but then we get there and the bag is empty. And it's really, we're just kind of like circling our own tail.
I've
And
it's uncanny you say that. I've been around some seriously high achievers, teaching at the elite level of the game. And the one individual said to me after winning a major championship, he goes, the following morning, I woke up and I thought I was going to hear like choirs of angels.
mhm.
And, the baby got sick in the morning and, it was like, oh, I get right back to it. Now that's behind me. And I still haven't found this is not who I am, I guess, is what I'm trying to get out here.
Yes. And to be honest, Mark, I think it's where it's tricky, because if you are just taking the perspective of like, I want to operate at the most elite level and nothing else matters, which I don't actually think is true. I think that's a story we tell ourselves and convince ourselves,
Mm.
because we still think when I get to that elite level, I'm going to be whole and complete. And then you get there and it's like, oh, it wasn't that. But let's just say that's the whole thing. Then yeah, maybe you just put your head down and grind, and you navigate with some basic psychology, the different things that come up on your journey, and maybe you can get there. I think there are athletes who do that. But if you're interested in one, I don't think that's absolutely necessary. I think there's lots of examples of people who achieve at a very high level, and positive psychology, the science of positive psychology, has demonstrated this as well, who are also deeply fulfilled. And the fulfillment also nurtures a different kind of resilience,
Yeah.
a different kind of optimism, a better mindset. So those can coexist. But yeah, I think if we created the story at an early age, once I get there, then I'm going to be happy. And we just have our heads down and we are so caught up in the grind that we never lift back up and ask, wait,
Yeah.
why am I doing this in the first place? And who is the being doing all of the doing? It's not like you have to let go of the doing, but who's behind it? Are you actually in touch with that part of you? And when you are, you're going to be able to show up in a much more full way, a much more whole way. Uh, and as I said before, you don't end up outsourcing your identity and everything to these achievements and other people.
And probably would find, I guess, too, correct me if I'm wrong, that your reaction to letdowns and adversity and stuff would probably be different as well. It wouldn't seem like it's just like the beginning and the end of all things when you make a few bogeys in a row, for argument's sakes.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and that again is like the science of positive psychology is focused on the positive side of achievement, of growth, of well-being, and it is very clear that those positive emotions have a buffering and a generative effect. Buffering against stress, and generative in the sense of they broaden our perspective and they cause us to build new resources. I mean, think about when you're in fear on the golf course. What's going to happen? The body is going to get smaller. You're going to get really narrow. You're going to start ruminating about everything that could go wrong, and you get stiff and tight.
Hmm.
But you come off a good hole, you're feeling open,
Yeah.
and those positive emotions, they expand. You're able to see more clearly, more broadly. The body is looser. So it all integrates with performance quite seamlessly.
Okay. This this is going to sound very physical. These questions here,
Mm,
given where you've just gone. We started with self love, and there was there's something in the way you answer questions that I have to ask in a minute. But before I go there, um, things like self talk,
mhm,
which now I'm learning are a function of who you are deep within anyway, and you can learn how not to do it. But where are you really coming from? But
mhm.
self talk and breathing and all these sorts of things, they are hugely important if we're trying to be in this place of fulfillment and being okay with whatever's going on. Is this observation, does it jive with you?
Yes, it does. And I would say for most people, it's a good first step working with how you are speaking to yourself.
Yeah.
And most of us, if other people talk to us the way we talk to ourselves, we either hit them in the face or we'd end that relationship very quickly.
Yeah.
So just starting to see how we talk to ourselves is key. But there's another stage here that's deeper. And this is where my time in the monastery
Okay.
really illuminated this depth. And that is that we go behind the self-talk altogether, because the self-talk is still just like talking to the talking, right? There's all these thoughts coming in, and now we're kind of trying to replace those thoughts with different thoughts or talk to those thoughts from another part of us.
Mhm.
There is a place within us that is able to just be aware of all of this happening. And your awareness of your thinking is not thinking. Your awareness of your anger is not angry. Your awareness of your fear is not in fear. And this is one of the places that we touch into in meditation, this observation, this vast awareness that is able to watch the flow of our experience moving through us without this constant identification with it, and also this constant need to fix it or change it.
Mhm.
And that's where the self-talk stuff can be limited. It's a good start, but you're still kind of working with the ego talking to the ego.
Gotcha.
And there's a place beyond all of that where you realize, oh, all of this thought that's coming up, it's not actually me. It's like clouds passing through the sky, but you become more identified with the sky itself. And that's where a really deep peace starts to emerge. And that's where working with the thoughts, it's kind of like a playground. If you are just caught in the self-talk thing of like, I need that in order to be peaceful, then you're still caught in this fear of like, oh, a bad thought arises, quickly need to replace it. But when you get to the point where you just see a thought as a thought, like a cloud passing through the sky, there's a depth to your presence and a vastness to your presence that is much more grounded and forms the foundation of a much more significant confidence.
So it's a mindfulness, right? Right. If this was,
Yeah.
if the people are like, okay, I'm connecting here with what Corey's saying. Now, what are my, what are my marching orders? What's the action list?
Yeah, we'll start with this.
Mindfulness, right?
Yeah, it's mindfulness. We could say that the capacity to be aware of your experience without being sucked into your experience in a spacious and curious way is mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And this might sound a bit out there, but this is non-mystical. Every person has access to this. And psychologists might call it metacognition, the ability to be aware of your thoughts. Um, but if you want to explore this, anyone listening, before you're going to bed at night, as you close your eyes, just watch what your mind is thinking about. Don't try to change it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to like calm the mind down. Just watch. What is the mind thinking about, as if you were eavesdropping on someone's conversation in a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are able to watch that happening, then who you are, at the very least, is separate from those thoughts. And we could say much bigger than those thoughts. And so that becomes this, like the first step of seeing that, oh, I am not this chaotic mind that I'm usually just riding up and down and trying to run away from.
Yeah.
There's a place within me that's able to know that that's happening, to see that's happening without being sucked into it. And that would be the first step. And concentration practices like focusing on the breath ground the system enough that we can actually just start to observe our experience. Because most of the time, we're so caught up in the next social media thing or the next distraction that
Mm.
we're kind of just swept around by the torment of it all.
For the golfers listening to this, look, we're going deeper than golf now,
Yeah.
and the fans of this podcast know that. Um, the you talk about being aware of the breath. I find more and more now the algorithm on my social media is introducing me to guys like yourself and folks for natural healing and breath, and so I've taken to it. It's not 6 months in a monastery, but now every morning I begin my day with it's about 5 minutes in the pool, which
Right.
is now cold, and it's getting colder. Okay, we're in the
Mhm.
northern hemisphere for the folks down south of the equator, and you get in and you sort of shocked awake by this water, and then I just spend time essentially just box breathing. And during that all, when I started, I was sort of I'm still aware of my counting, but now through this all, I'm now becoming aware of the birds and the feel of the sunlight on my skin and the feel of the water on my body. So I'm getting to this place where I almost get the sense that it's grounding me in a way, just reducing all the noise, because sometimes you wake up in the morning and it's coffee and I've got to get here and I've got to do that and I mustn't forget this. But this is putting my day into perspective a little bit. Is this a decent practice in your
For
opinion?
sure. I mean, now you're also getting the benefits of cold therapy, which is increasingly clear and abundant. and you're learning it might not be the least polarizing metaphor to use, but like those bits of discomfort that you're relaxing into, it's like a psychological vaccination for the mind.
Okay.
And you are meeting some pain, softening into it, and showing your mind that this is something that we can be with and be calm with. And that sets you up for other forms of pain throughout the day. It might not be cold, it might be, your partner says something to you that triggers you, and it's just like, okay, well, that's a shock to the system, but we've trained ourselves to develop a sense of groundedness with that. So yeah, that can be quite powerful. The one thing I'll offer though, with things like breath work or cold therapy or even plant medicines, where you get these really intense experiences, is that they don't mimic the mundane reality that we often live in.
Hmm.
And sometimes we can get addicted to, I need my cold, or I need my sauna, or I need my high from my breath work to feel like I am doing the work.
Understand.
And I find it to be really important to also work at the level of mundane consciousness, where you wake up in the morning, nothing has happened yet, and you just take 5 minutes to sit like that, however it is, in the neutrality of it, in the boredom of it, in the fatigue of it, and learn to relax into and be with that, because that is going to be most of your day, rather than these very intense moments.
Silly question. Forgive me if it appears so.
Mhm.
Because you speak of that now. Now I'm picturing meditation, which I want to talk about. During your time in the monastery, was it like, I'm imagining sitting there with your legs crossed and you're in decent posture and you're in decent stature and such, and you're breathing and you're just allowing your mind to move, to go? Or do you sometimes stand, you walk? Is it just
Yeah. So 14 hours straight of sitting would be, and many people often think it's that, but it would be ridiculous, very difficult to do. So you have to alternate. You do an hour of sitting meditation and an hour of walking meditation. Walking meditation is just basically walking back 10 steps back and forth very slowly. It looks like the most boring thing you could possibly imagine. The sitting meditation, you don't have to sit cross-legged. Many people do, but I've always had very tight hips, probably why I wasn't good
okay?
enough at golf. And so I would kneel. I would put two cushions down and I would kneel on those. But the practice we were doing there is, you start by stabilizing the mind by focusing on the breath, and
Okay.
specifically the sensations of the rising and falling of the abdomen. And anyone listening, you could even just place a hand on your belly right now as I'm talking, and you could just feel those sensations of, on the inhale, there's an expansion of the belly, on an exhale, there's a deflation. And we're following those sensations as a way to anchor the attention into the present. From there, once there's some stability, you actually move into what's called open presence or choiceless awareness, where you're not focusing on anything in particular. You're just sitting back and watching whatever moves through your experience. And that can sound like the biggest waste of time if you're not familiar with this, but it's everything, because what you are looking at is your life. You are looking at the constituent elements of your life: thoughts, emotions, sensations. There's only so many things that are going to show up:
Mhm.
seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and then whatever's happening in the mind.
Yeah.
But you are learning to be with all of that and the flow of it and the impermanence of it in a non-reactive way. And what that slowly does is it takes your identity from being caught in the thought and the emotion or the fleeting experience into the actual observer itself.
Right.
And so for anyone who's listening to this and feeling like, well, this is getting spiritual or meditative, it's like, I'm here for golf. This is everything to do with you on the golf course.
Mhm.
Your ability to hit a shot, it sucked, it went in the trees, and you have this wave of emotion that comes through you. Well, what's going to happen? That emotion's going to come up, then the thoughts are going to come up of like, I'm
I suck.
terrible at this,
I'm
right?
terrible.
And now it's going to be a bogey or a double bogey. That's all just an impermanent flow of experience. If you can be able to watch that as an observer and smile at it, it's like, oh, of course I hit it here, of course now there's an emotion, now there's a thought, and you just watch it. You're not perpetuating that loop, and it comes and it goes, and you reground, and then it's just, okay, next step, next shot. and it becomes like a 4 hour meditation, which is, if I ever write a book on meditation and golf, I'll probably call it the 4 hour meditation, because golf's happening in what, like 2 minutes around where you're actually swinging, everything's in between. And so how you navigate those in between moments conditions how you show up for the next shot.
Awesome. I have a sense of peace about me just listening because I was aware of my breathing as you're doing it too, and the whole system just calms. And for folks who are struggling with physical ailments and stuff, this is going to be good for your overall well-being too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Big time. I mean, I know Morgan Hoffman was on that journey for a while as well. And um, he did a ton for his own physical well-being and mental well-being. So yeah, I mean, this is something that will not only improve your game, but just all aspects of
Yeah.
your life. And it won't make it so that your whole life is riding on the next shot, which I think is important.
Well, yeah, I know a bunch of professional golfers who listen to this, and I'm sure a lot of them are not taking notes, but just really understanding. Um,
Yeah.
I'm getting to it. When I speak to you and the folks, you can watch Corey on YouTube as well. If you go to the website or to YouTube, just search for this. Um, when I ask or make a certain statement, I see at times you close your eyes for me, it feels like a few seconds, but
Mm.
in TV and radio, so I know how long 5 seconds actually is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a second and a half, if that. But I see you take a minute or take a second, and then you give me the response. It's not like you're ever in a rush to do this. And this to me is a skill at life. It's something I'm always striving. Striving is probably the wrong word, but something I'm wanting to improve at.
Mm.
But it's certainly a skill in golf because I feel like too often times we react too fast. We're too quick to talk. We're too quick to think, to offer excuse, whatever the case might be. So you do this so beautifully. So I want you to talk about that some. Is it now
Mm.
conscious or was it something you learned?
It I observed it in one of my teachers early on, and um and then somewhere along the journey, even right now I'm
Yeah,
doing
you're
it,
doing it now.
I
Okay.
started doing it, and it it wasn't out of mimicry. It was because I started wanting to be, as I got more connected to my inner world, I saw how easy it was to abandon that, to just go into my own scripts, right? You ask a question about stress. I've talked about stress a million times. I can just pull a script from my head and just, give you the sound bites.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have any aliveness to it. It wouldn't be connected to me being with you and this audience and how I'm feeling about that topic right now.
Mhm.
And in my experience as a teacher, the most I can ever offer is when I am connected to the thing I'm talking about in a very true and alive way. And so when I close my eyes, it's my process of just taking a pause, feeling my body and checking in. How do I actually feel about this? And making sure it's coming from something deeper in me rather than just my mind script that I can, you know, pull out of the book.
That is so beautiful. Because, yeah, mea culpa, maybe. I work for CBS in television. We call live sport, which you can never really plan for, but you have some ideas maybe that you might want to address if the chance presents itself. But ordinarily, when I'm at my best, and that's probably the wrong way to describe it,
Mm.
if I ever listen back to the playback of the show, I say things that I'm like, good golly, where did that stuff come from?
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I have the script, then it sounds forced. It sounds kind of delivered. There's not Simon Cowell used to say to me, he goes, you were pitch perfect, but I want you to connect with me. And I
Mm.
never understood what that connection is, but now you've helped me to be there because I can see this and sense it now too. And it's the same thing in golf. I mean, how often we've had the best plans and they're laid to waste on the first hole,
Yeah.
and then the
Yes.
script goes away, and then what do you do?
Yeah. And this is I mean, I really love what you're sharing here, and also curious how CBS will be if you start taking 5 second pauses with your eyes closed.
Not very good. I got like
Not
five
gonna happen.
seconds.
Yeah. But one of the things that we can do in relationship with that is, and the thing that I'm also doing when I close my eyes is I am reconnecting to my body, because when I'm with you right now, it could be very easy for me to feel like I leave myself and just kind of go out to you.
Mhm.
And I mean, for folks listening to this, that might feel a little abstract, but next time you're in a conversation, just notice, like, are you in your body? Are your feet on the ground? Are you feeling your breath? And I like to feel like 70% of my attention is on me in my body, and 30% is going outward. You could do that in relationship, but you could also do that on the golf course, because we're so caught up in the external when we're golfing. We're looking around and it's just everything that we're seeing is connected to, like, is this going to be successful or unsuccessful, good or bad? But if you could come back to your body and be more fully in your body and then go, okay, I'm here. And whether I'm on hole 1 or 16 or 18, it's still me, still with my mind, still with my body. And then I'm just offering about 13% or 30% of my attention outward. It just allows you to be more grounded and connected to yourself, because it's all happening right here anyway. It's
Mm.
all happening in this fathom long body.
I love what you say there. It reminds me of an interaction I had with Jim Nance, who, look, we all know he's the doyen of sports announcing, and to work alongside him for a little kid from South Africa is still mind numbing.
Yeah.
But on the one hole, it was likely Pebble Beach, which is home for him. And we're looking out there, and so they come to me. I'm on the course, and I started my call with, it's like sensory overload out here right now. You got cliffs and water and crossing winds and pressure, and there's all this stuff on the go. And here's this young man, Tom Hoagie, who's trying to win his first PGA Tour event. And so I said, it's sensory overload, bunker, cliffs, the whole thing. But it's just time to get singular and try and hit the ball there.
Yeah.
And to me, it just happened. But afterwards, he sought me out. And when you get a compliment from a guy like him, you feel like $1 million.
Yeah.
And so that was a brilliant call. And I couldn't remember what it was. And he talked about the fact that I'd used the term sensory overload. And he said, because that's what I feel when I'm there. I'm like, oh, goodness, the wind's from here and this, and there's all this stuff going on. And all of a sudden, my hands are on the wheel, but I'm not aware of who I am and what am I supposed to do in this situation.
Yeah.
There's a golf element to this too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if we have sensitive systems, our sensory experience will create a lot of activation and energy in the body.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things around that I want to offer folks, because when I come in, or when they hear that I'm a meditation teacher, most people, and whether it's executives or athletes, there's an assumption that I'm going to say that if you're feeling anxious, you should just try to calm yourself down and focus on the breath. My experience, when you're in tense situations and high sensory experiences, trying to calm yourself down, unless you have a lot of training, can be really hard to do. And even when you do have a lot of training, can be difficult. And it's not always the most effective thing. We can think of that as an energy, and maybe you've talked about this before, but the energy of excitement, the physiological experience of that, is nearly identical to the physiological experience of anxiety. The main distinction there is the meaning that we place on the experience. So 2 people on a roller coaster, their hands are sweating, their hearts are racing, they're feeling a lot of energy in their body. One is terrified and one can't wait for it. Same physiological experience, different meaning that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find yourself on the course, and maybe before the first tee, I often find that trying to calm myself down doesn't work well. But what does work is meeting that energy, telling myself that, okay, this is my body preparing for something that we're excited about. And instead of trying to calm down, I imagine the experience going amazingly well. And so good pictures, good imagery, and it's like practicing Aikido. It's blending with the energy of your body and directing it in a new direction. And so for folks who maybe struggle with the calming down in these intense situations, notice what your mind is thinking about. Chances are it's telling a scary or fear-based narrative. And then just see, if I were to imagine and see this going perfectly well, what would my mind do with that? And then allow the energy to be filtered through that, rather than trying to eliminate it entirely.
You're helping me with my blood pressure too.
Good.
I got to work at white coat syndrome. I've kept you for so long. You've been so insightful. I want to pitch two things at you. These are tweets of yours, and the folks can go and find you. You have a website. I'll let you share that in a bit. The social media is well worth your while, people.
Mm,
First off, I want to talk about the biggest flex
mm.
you had tweeted, and I'm going to read it back to you. And you said, the biggest flex, putting your head on the pillow at the end of the day and being so damn proud of how you navigated the absolute shit show of being a human. And I was like, this is like the gospel truth over here. For a golfer, for a businessman or woman, for a mom, goodness gracious, working mom, whatever, this is what it is. You wake up, you're like, it's coming, and then you know it's coming, and then the end of the day, you just got to go. We made it. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it is a deep teaching, and uh, for anyone who's just going through something difficult right now, and we're just alive, you're gonna hit these points in your life where you were just brought to your knees and you don't know what to do next. You'll
Mhm.
have competing needs, you're confused, you've followed a path for a long time, you don't know if it's time to give it up or push harder. Like, it is hard. And I'm increasingly convinced that anyone who doesn't think life is hard either isn't paying close enough attention, they're disconnected,
Yeah.
or they've just had a very pleasant arrangement of external variables that have matched the script of their mind. But that's extremely rare. So this is just the reality of life. And it's unpredictable, it's impermanent, it's always changing. But what you have is your relationship with yourself always. And that's where you can come back to in those moments where it's just like, I have no idea what to do. It's so confusing, but I know that I am listening and trying to figure it out as best I can. And I am so damn proud of myself for that, because only I know how difficult that is. And it's true. Each of us only knows what it's like to be us, everything that we're navigating, and how tricky it is. So, yeah, that tweet came from a lived experience and was just like, wow,
Well,
this is hard, but I'm proud of myself.
it's so apropos too, and what you were talking about, living with yourself. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and right now she's so interested in what everyone else is doing and saying and thinking about me. She thinks she knows what they're thinking about. And Lordy, it's causing turmoil like you can't imagine. All right, to close, and this you've it's about life, but I could insert golf wherever the word life was in there. I'm
Mm,
taking some liberties, right? So yeah, this is you also. If you want a life or golf that is great, you have to be willing to let go of a life or golf that is good.
mhm,
And I think this is so true. And it's complete serendipity that somewhere through this, I said, it's going to be letting go with Corey. Um,
mm.
the final question here was about letting go of what's good if you want what's great. And I'd love your take there, please.
Yeah. I don't want to misconstrue this for folks to to get caught in that this is a plug for maximizing.
Yeah.
I think and it's a very true reality that there are certain things in life that where the actual juice and the love and the contentment comes from is being with this as it is rather than constantly trying to make it better. So the life that is great that I'm pointing to is the life that is more aligned with the truest thing in you.
Mhm.
And sometimes that truest thing is just, I want to pursue professional golf. And I know it's going to require letting go of these things that I love and these things that I like. But this is the thing that is pulsing in me on the deepest level.
Mhm.
Other times it's the opposite. Other times it's simple. Um, but that letting go process where we get stuck in a life is good is a life that is predictable, safe, and it meets certain basic needs that keep us feeling like, all right, this is good enough, but it's not quite the thing. And I was speaking to people on that level where there's a fear of letting go of that safety because you're stepping into the unknown. And
Yeah.
if you do want that greatness, a life that is truly aligned with the deepest part of you, it does require letting go of that. And it is okay to let go and not know what will come next. The most spiritual thing I'll say here is that the universe tends to take care of a surrendered heart. So that
Amen.
just requires trust to see the truth of it.
Amen. There's nothing like a good dollop of faith. Corey, I love you, man. Well, what you've shared here is tremendous. I know it's going to be helpful. I know people listening from wherever they are probably want more. I know I do, so I'm speaking on behalf of them. If so, please share the website, the social media. Where can they go find more of you, please?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. All my events and offerings are CoryMuscara.com, but most of the stuff I have is free. Instagram is where I'm posting the most at Cory Muscara. Um, and my podcast is called Practicing Human, which is just short, simple episodes, 5 to 15 minutes every day, 5 days a week, where it's just me speaking on different topics. So those would probably be the three starting points.
Okay, on the mark, subscribers, go subscribe to Practicing Human. Corey, thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Mark.
This has been tremendous. I really appreciate you.
A real pleasure. Thank you.